In this video I'm gonna go through the multiple choice core exam from 2020 and show how to get all the points and where to avoid the pitfalls that Cambridge put into multiple choice like this. So here we see the first three questions, and as usual Cambridge starts in the beginning of the syllabus. The first one asks us here that the diagram shows what happened in experiment with plant seedings, and the important thing here is that we notice that there's light and we see a change in direction of the plants. In this case we have four possible options. Excretion is where you get rid of stuff, so it can't be that. Nutrition, some might answer nutrition here because they think the plants need light, but it's not why they turn towards the light. Respiration, again this happens during the day, so it's not about respiration, which leads us to the only possible answer, which is also the right one, which is D, sensitivity, as the plant shows photosensitivity and turns toward the light. The next one, we asked about a rat who has a scientific name Ratus ratus, and then we remember from chapter 1 that all names are first genus and then species, which means the only possible answer here is A. The last one here, we asked which list contains only arthropods, and then we have to remember what are arthropods. Well, arthropods are our arachnids, our insects, all that. If you have a doubt about it, it's a phylum. Arthropod are the insects, the crustaceans, arachnids, and the Mirapidae. There are more, but these are the one that Cambridge chooses. So the first one here has amphibians, so it can't be that one. Number C has fish, so it can't be that one. They're vertebrate. And this one has reptiles. They're also vertebrate, so it can't be the answer. So the only possible answer is B. So the next three questions only is about plant cells. So here we are looking at plant cells. This is quite important for the stuff we're going to look at. The first one here, we shows a plant cell, and we want to find out the number of chromosomes it contains. Which labeled part should be examined more closely? Well, B is a vacuole. It can't be that one, but that is a mistake many students make. C is the endoplasmatic reticulum, and D is the cell wall or the cell membrane in this case, which the only possible answer that is correct is A, which is the nucleus. The next question asks what are leaves example of. Cells is a wrong answer because there are many cells in a leaf. Organ systems, it's not. Tissue, there are many different kinds of tissue in a leaf and you should know them by now. So the only possible correct answer is B, it's an organ. The last one, number 6 here, is a little more interesting. We are shown again a plant cell. Is quite important several minutes after it's been placed in a concentrated solution of sugar. So what's happened here is osmotic stress that will draw water out from the cell. When that happens, the inside of the cell will shrink a little bit. Now if this was an animal cell, the entire cell would shrink, but since it's a plant cell and we have a cell wall, the cell wall will remain rigid while the rest will shrink. This means the only right answer is A, because in B we see no shrinking. In C we see the entire cell wall and cell membrane separating. It's not correct. And in D we see a weird thing where we have 3 new vacuoles, so none of that can be correct. So the only correct answer here is of course A. So the next question actually is kind of the same as the last one. We are told here that an uncooked piece of potato were placed in different liquids for 1 hour and then measured. Which liquid will cause a decrease in the size of the piece of the potato? Well, if we put the potato in pure water, water will go in and the size will increase. So A is a wrong answer. B, a sugar solution less concentrated than in a potato cell content will also mean a net movement of water into the potato, so it can't be that one. Sugar solution more concentrated than the potato cell content? Yes, that will lead to water loss, the same way we saw in question 6. So C is the correct answer. In 8 they ask about the different type of food tests we also done in class. Which food testing solution shows a positive result when it turns from blue to purple? Well, Benedict, when positive, turns red, so it can't be that one. Ethanol turns cloudy, and iodine turns black, so the only possible answer is our Bioret test, which turns purple when it detects protein. The last one asks, which teeth are used for grinding? And the student might remember that's the premolar and the molar, these two here, 3 and 4, which means that C is the only possible answer in this question. The next question here continues with the plant cell, which seems to be the theme for this multiple choice. We're shown a plant cell and they ask in which part of the cell does photosynthesis occur. Well, as we hopefully know, it happens in the chloroplasts, and the chloroplasts, well, A is the cell wall, B is cell membrane, so it can't be that, C is a cell core, and D are the chloroplasts, so that's the only right answer. The next one asks which substance found in healthy diet helps to prevent constipation, a hard and tight stomach. Well, fat, yeah, it might be, but the answer they're looking for here is B. There can be some cases where a lot of fat could help to prevent it, but the answer they are looking for, and which is in the syllabus, is B. Question 12 shows a graph of the effect of pH on the activity of an enzyme, and the clever student will here see at the optimal pH is around 2. Then we asked where in the body this enzyme would be most active, and since the only place in the body where we have such a low pH is the stomach, well, the only possible right answer here is D. So this one here continues with our plant theme, and this is where my class, many of the students had problems. So I'm just going to go over them in a little more detail. After passing through the root hair of the plant, what is the next tissue through which the water passes? A lot of my students said, oh, it goes into the xylem. And it's correct, the water will end up in the xylem, but to get there, first it has to move into the cortex. So although this is correct that it'll end up there, if you have to look at the next tissue, the only possible right answer is the cortex. So don't immediately look at water and then say xylem, because xylem is doing the water transport. The next one here as well gave quite a few students trouble. From which part of the leaf does most of water evaporate during transpiration? And here it's important to remember where the water is, because yes, water will exit through the guard cells, yes, water will enter through the xylem vessel, but where is the water in the leaf? Well, it is in the spongy mesophyll cell, so this is also where most of the evaporation will happen. The cuticle has a waxy layer, so that will limit evaporation. The last one here asks which blood vessel carries blood to the muscles of the heart. This one also confused quite a few students. Let's look at them. B, the Pluminary Artery, well, that one carries blood through the lungs, toward the lungs, so it can't be that one. The renal, it means it's kidney, so it can't be that one. And the vena cava carries deoxygenated blood from the body, so the only possible correct answer here is the coronary arteries, which are the arteries around the heart, and if you've forgotten that, that is in chapter 9 of the book. The next question also dwells into the nature of the human heart. It's a question that comes up a lot, so it's quite smart for you doing revision if you look at it. We asked what is the blood level here, the blood vessel X, what that one is. Well, let's look at the options. Aorta here, well, aorta will take blood from the heart to the body. So aorta is this one. The pulmonary artery takes blood from the heart, or the pulmonary artery takes blood from the heart to the lung. So that will be this one. And the vena cava takes blood from the body into the heart. So that will be this one. So our only possible correct answer is C, the pulmonary vein, which takes oxygenated blood from the lung and into the heart. Question 17 here also confused quite a few of my students. What is a chemical barrier to pathogens? Nose hair and skin here are mechanical barriers. White blood cells is part of the immune system, so the only chemical barrier here is the stomach acid, C. Last, what is the site of gas exchange in humans? This one here you should hopefully be able to remember. Yes, the air passes through the nose, the trachea and the bronchus, but it is in the alveoli, B, that the gas exchange happens with the capillaries inside the lungs. We carry on with the subject of respiration here. The substances listed are associated with aerobic respiration. We are told CO2, glucoses, oxygen, water. Then they asked which substances are the product of aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration is with oxygen, which means we use glucoses and we use oxygen, and then we end up with CO2 and water, which is why CO2 and water is the right, and therefore B is the correct answer. The next one here, we have a diagram showing the breathing system. These kind of questions here often come up in Cambridge and they can be a little hard to decipher. But first we look at what is one. Well, one is the trachea. So already now we can see we don't have to look at A and B anymore because they are off. So B is not the diaphragm. Alright, so D is off. So the only possible correct answer is C. Because then we have the trachea, the bronchus, and the bronchioles out here. I think it's often easy to see which one it can't be and then go from that. So now we are quickly moving on in the syllabus, and now we're entering the kidney here. And the first question here, we asked which labeled structure is the ureter. It's important to remember that we have the ureter and the urethra, which sounds almost the same. But if we look at A here, well, it can't really be A, because A is the aorta going in. It can't be B, because B is the renal artery. C is the ureter, so that is the one, and D is the urethra, which sounds almost the same, but it's not that one. So if you have problem remember this, all of this is in your book at page 156. Sorry for the bad handwriting. Which structure transfers information to the central nervous system? Well, you just have to remember to transfer system to the CNS. It's always the sensory neurons who does that. And if you have a problem remember that, you can find that on page 163 in your book. The last question here relates to hormones. We are told about a hormone here that 1. Increased breathing rate, 2. Increased pulse rate, 3. Growth of body hair, and 4. Open up the pupils. Which responses are caused by the hormone adrenaline? Well, 3. Growth of body hair is not there. So any answer that contains number 3 we can cross out. So it can't be A and it can't be C because they both contain body hair. Well, we do know that adrenaline increases breathing rate, and since number D does not have breathing rate there, the only possible correct answer will be B. Next question is about the eye, and this one is actually a little tricky. They ask here which part of the eye focuses light, and if we look at the book at page 169, it says that the cornea here is responsible for most of the bending of the light, but the adjustment, the focus, is made by the lens. So this can be a little tricky here, but since focus and adjustment is the same here, we're looking for C, the lens. 25 is fun because 25 is actually the same question as question 1, where we saw the small plants bending towards the light. Well, we asked here which response is shown by the shoot of the plant. Graviotropism? No, that is towards gravity, so this one is wrong. Photosynthesis, many of my students say that, and it's true that light will cause photosynthesis in the leaves, but we're not asking about that, we're asking about why it bends, and that is due to phototropism, growth towards the light. 26 asks which statement about antibiotic use in humans is correct. Well, A say that different types of antibiotics are used to remove antibodies from the body. This has nothing to do with antibiotics. B says antibiotics are injected in childhood to prevent disease in adult. It doesn't work that way. That's not how the immune system works. Antibiotics are used to treat diseases caused by virus. Well, antibiotics only work against bacteria, so the only possible right one is D. Different type of antibiotics are used because bacteria can become resistant, which is true. 27 asks which conditions are always required for the germination of seeds. Well, we know that seeds to germinate need oxygen, so since B doesn't have oxygen, we can cross that one off. We also know that they need the right temperature. C doesn't has that one, so we can cross that one off. And then we see that A claims that they need light. And if seeds needed light, they couldn't germinate underground, so that one is wrong. So the only possible and correct answer here is D. We now move on to reproductions in plants and humans. The first one asks here, where does fertilization and pollination occur in the flower? Well, pollination happens at the stigma, as you can see in figure 16.6, which then we have the only possible answer is then B. We don't even have to look at the ovary, but we could look at that as well. That will also give us the correct answer. When do the following stages occur in a typical human menstrual cycle? Bleeding. Well, bleeding happens during day 1 to 4, so we can already now cross off C and A. Fertilization typically happens halfway through here, so that happens around ovulation, fertilization, so our correct answer here would be D. The last one here looks at groups of pregnancy and focuses on women using the pill, a intrauterine device, which is like a spiral, a diaphragm, or looking at your morning temperature. And we see most got pregnant here and the few got here. Then they ask which method of contraception is the most efficient. Well, that is the chemical, in this case here, which is the pill, as we see here. So here in 21 we look at a quite awesome looking tiger, and we asked which visible adaptive feature makes a tiger a good predator. Long whiskers, they are good for sensing, but they don't make them good predators. Small ears, they have small ears, it does make them good. Thick fur is good for isolation, but it does nothing for predation. So it must be A, the large teeth, which are the main weapon which they use to kill their prey. In 32 they ask, which statement about the human sex chromosomes is correct? They say females have 2 Y chromosomes. No, only males have Y chromosomes, so B is off. Female have an X and a Y. No, that's male who have that, so A is also off. Males and females have at least 1 Y chromosome. Well, females don't, so the only possible answer is that both males and females have at least 1 X chromosome. That is also entirely correct. So here we look at some more genetics. Here we see a parent who's homozygote dominant and another parent who is homozygote recessive, and both of them got heterozygote offspring. So we ask, which plant have a heterozygote genotype? Parents? No, they're homozygote. Dwarf parent only? No, homozygote. Both offspring plants? Yes, that's correct. In 34 they ask, the graph shows the mass of 2 different types of tomatoes. What can be concluded from the graph? That genes does not affect the mass of potatoes? No, obviously it does. The type 2 tomatoes are sometimes smaller? No, type 2 is always bigger, so it can't be that one. The type 2 tomatoes show a discontinuous variation? No, I'll say this is very much a classic continuous variation. So the only possible correct answer is B. Type 1 tomatoes show continuous variation. It does. Beautiful bell curve. So the answer is B. 35 they ask, which is an example of a population? And we have to remember, a population are all the number of that species living in an area. All the animals and plants living in a lake. No, that's an ecosystem, not that one. Different herbivores in a forest. No, different herbivores are different species, so it can't be that one. All the mahogany trees growing in a forest. Yes, because it's the same species in the same area. Almost at the end, and now we are at the ecology questions here. The first one shows a food chain, and in that food chain we see that seaweed is a primary producer, whelk is a primary consumer, secondary consumer is crabs, and tertiary consumer are seagulls. What will happen if the number of secondary consumers, which are the crabs, will increase? Well, more crabs will means fewer whelks. So the correct answer here is C, because the crabs will eat more of the whelks. What is the role of anaerobic respiration in bread making? Anaerobic respiration is where yeast makes CO2 out of sugar. To produce alcohol to flavor the bread? No, that is a longer process and that only works without oxygen. To produce gas to make the bread rise, that is why we do it. To release energy? No, that's not why. To release enough lactic acid to kill the yeast? No, it's the heat that kills the yeast. 38. A crop plant has been genetically modified to make it resistant to herbicides. What is a possible disadvantage of this? Loss of weeds reduce competition. That's not really a disadvantage, but some weeds might become resistant to the herbicide. That is a disadvantage, and that is a disadvantage they are looking for. Second to last question here is a little tricky, but once you realize what they're asking about, it's quite easy. Well, we have a direction of water flow, so the water flows this way. The diagram shows the result of a survey of the type of animal found along the stretch near the factory. We're told here the factory is emptying pollutants into the water, so the water downstream from here will be polluted. So the least polluted water will be before the factory. And here we find the mayfly and the stonefly. And since the mayfly is not here, but the stonefly is, the correct answer to least polluted water is D. The last one here is actually quite easy. The graph shows 4 areas of a forest that were cut down, then replanted with trees on one part of the world. Which part of the forest was used most sustainable? Well, in A, C, and D, we all cut down more than we replant. But in B, replanted and trees cut down is the same, which means this is the only one who's sustainable. I hope this all made sense. Thank you very much for paying attention.